Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something powerful, something every woman needs to hear, not because we're weak, but because we're strong. Strong enough to remind ourselves that our worth isn't tied to what we give away, but to what we hold on to. We've all been told at some point what we should do to make relationships work. But today, let's flip the script. Let's talk about what we should never do with a man. Not because we're anti-love, but because we're pro-respect for ourselves, respect for our dreams, and respect for the lives we're building. Here are 5 things no woman should ever do in any relationship, no matter how deeply you care or how long you've been together. Abandoning your own truth is one of the most profound forms of self-betrayal, and it often happens so quietly that you barely notice it at first. It begins with small compromises, little shifts in how you speak, act, or think to fit into someone else's world. You tell yourself it's no big deal, that it's just a minor adjustment to keep the peace or make someone happy. But over time, these small sacrifices accumulate, chipping away at your identity until you find yourself standing in a version of your life that no longer feels like your own. Your truth is the foundation of who you are. It's your values, your passions, your quirks, and the unique way you see the world. It's the compass that guides you, the voice inside you that whispers, this is right or this isn't for me. When you abandon that truth for someone else, whether it's to please, impress, or avoid conflict, you're essentially telling yourself that your needs and desires are secondary. And that's a dangerous lie to believe. What makes abandoning your truth so insidious is that it often masquerades as love or compromise. You think, if I just adjust this one thing, it'll make him happy, but love isn't about shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. It's about being fully seen and accepted for who you are, flaws and all. True love doesn't demand that you twist yourself into someone unrecognizable. It celebrates the person you already are. When you let go of your truth, you lose more than just a piece of yourself. You lose the opportunity to build a relationship based on authenticity. Without your truth, the connection becomes unbalanced, a facade rather than a foundation. Over time, resentment builds not just toward the other person, but toward yourself. You start wondering why you feel empty or restless, why the relationship doesn't bring the fulfillment it once did. The answer is simple. You've silenced the voice that should have been guiding you all along. Standing in your truth doesn't mean you can't be flexible or open-minded. Compromise is about meeting in the middle. Abandoning your truth is about erasing yourself from the equation altogether. Reclaiming your truth begins with self-awareness. Ask yourself, am I showing up as my full self in this relationship? Are my values, needs, and dreams being honored not just by my partner, but by me? If the answer is no, it's time to pause and realign. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years suppressing it. But discomfort is often the first step toward freedom. The right partner won't just accept your truth, they'll cherish it. They'll encourage you to be more of yourself, not less. And when you refuse to abandon your truth, you're not just protecting your identity, you're creating the possibility for a deeper, more authentic love. Because the greatest gift you can give to any relationship is the real, unfiltered, unapologetic version of you. Suppressing your voice in a relationship or in any aspect of life is one of the most disempowering things you can do. Your voice is not just about the words you speak. It represents your thoughts, your values, your needs, and the core of who you are. When you silence yourself, whether out of fear, discomfort, or a desire to avoid conflict, you begin to lose touch with your authenticity. Over time, this self-silencing can take a significant toll on your confidence, your sense of self-worth, and the health of your relationships. Suppressing your voice often starts subtly. Maybe you hesitate to share an opinion because you're worried it will be dismissed or ridiculed. Perhaps you stay quiet about something that hurt you because you fear being labeled too sensitive or too dramatic. Or you might avoid expressing your needs because you've convinced yourself they're less important than those of others. These small moments of suppression may feel inconsequential in the moment, but they add up, creating a pattern where you prioritize peace or acceptance over your truth. The cost of this suppression is high. When you withhold your voice, you deny yourself the opportunity to be fully seen and understood. Relationships thrive on honesty and vulnerability, and when you silence yourself, you limit the depth of connection you can share with others. What's more, suppressing your voice often leads to resentment, not just toward the other person, but toward yourself. You may begin to feel invisible or undervalued, but the root cause isn't always that others don't respect you. It's that you haven't given them the chance to hear or understand your truth. It's important to recognize that your voice is powerful. It has the ability to set boundaries, share ideas, express emotions, and advocate for what matters to you. Suppressing it might seem like the easier option in the short term, especially if you want to avoid tension or maintain harmony. But true harmony can only exist when all voices in a relationship are heard and valued. When you suppress your voice, you're not just avoiding conflict. You're creating a one-sided dynamic where your needs and perspectives go unmet. Reclaiming your voice starts with believing it matters. This might sound simple, but it requires a conscious shift in how you see yourself and your role in your relationships. You have the right to speak up, not just when something is wrong, but also when you have something to contribute, when you want to celebrate a win, or when you simply want to share a piece of yourself. Speaking your truth doesn't mean being aggressive or confrontational. It means being authentic and respectful in how you express yourself. It's also important to remember that your voice may not always be met with immediate acceptance or agreement, and that's okay. The goal isn't to control how others respond, but to honor your own truth. Over time, you'll find that using your voice strengthens your confidence and your relationships. It sets the tone for mutual respect and understanding, creating space for deeper, more authentic connections. Your voice is a reminder to yourself and to others that you matter. Suppressing it only diminishes your light, while expressing it allows you to step fully into your power. When you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your identity, your confidence, and your ability to shape the life and relationships you truly deserve. Accepting disrespect as normal is one of the most harmful choices you can make, not just in relationships, but in life as a whole. Disrespect often creeps in quietly, disguised as teasing, dismissiveness, or occasional outbursts that are later justified or excused. Over time, it can become the backdrop of your interactions, so familiar that you start to believe it's just part of the dynamic, or worse, that it's somehow your fault. But let's be clear, disrespect is never acceptable. It is a violation of your worth, a subtle or sometimes blatant signal that your feelings, thoughts, and boundaries don't matter as much as they should. In a healthy relationship, mutual respect is non-negotiable. It is the foundation that supports everything else: trust, communication, intimacy, and love. Without respect, these other elements crumble, leaving behind a connection that may feel like love on the surface, but is actually built on imbalance and control. Disrespect can take many forms, from the overt to the insidious. It might look like a partner who constantly interrupts you, dismisses your opinions, or belittles your accomplishments. It could show up as sarcasm disguised as humor, criticism disguised as concern, or anger disguised as passion. Over time, you might start to question yourself. Am I being too sensitive? Am I expecting too much? These doubts are exactly how disrespect gains a foothold, encouraging you to minimize your feelings and tolerate behavior that you should never accept. One of the reasons people start to accept disrespect is the fear of confrontation or loss. You might think, If I bring it up, it'll cause a fight. If I set a boundary, they might leave, but here's the truth. Allowing disrespect to persist doesn't preserve a relationship. It erodes it. Every instance of unaddressed disrespect chips away at your self-esteem and your connection to the other person. It teaches them that it's okay to disregard your boundaries and shows you that your needs are less important than their comfort. It's also worth noting that disrespect is often a slippery slope. What starts as a small, seemingly insignificant behavior can escalate over time if it goes unchecked. A sarcastic remark today can become outright hostility tomorrow. A dismissive attitude in one situation can spread to other areas of the relationship. This is why it's so important to recognize disrespect early and address it firmly. The first step is to believe in your own worth. Respect begins with how you treat yourself, and others will take their cues from you. When you set clear boundaries and enforce them, you send a powerful message. I value myself, and I won't settle for less than what I deserve. Addressing disrespect doesn't mean escalating conflict. It means calmly but firmly standing your ground. You don't have to justify or over-explain your feelings. A simple statement like, I don't appreciate being spoken to that way, can be enough to start the conversation. And if the other person is unwilling to change or dismisses your concerns, it's a sign that they may not be capable of the respect you deserve. Refusing to accept disrespect isn't just about setting boundaries with others, it's about setting boundaries with yourself. It's about deciding that you will no longer allow your dignity to be compromised for the sake of keeping the peace or maintaining a relationship. Respect isn't a privilege someone bestows upon you. It's a right you claim for yourself. And when you claim it, you open the door to healthier, more fulfilling relationships that honor who you truly are. Losing yourself in someone else is one of the most common and subtle traps in relationships. It starts with love, excitement, and the desire to be close to someone, but it can quickly shift into an imbalance where your sense of self begins to fade. You find yourself making decisions based solely on their needs, adopting their interests as your own, and reshaping your life to fit into theirs. While it might feel like love or devotion in the moment, losing yourself in someone else ultimately diminishes your identity, leaving you disconnected from who you truly are. Love is meant to enhance your life, not eclipse it. It's supposed to be a partnership where two whole, unique individuals come together to support, challenge, and grow with one another. But when you lose yourself in someone else, that balance is lost. Instead of contributing your individuality to the relationship, you begin to dissolve into the other person, letting their preferences and priorities dictate your choices. Over time, this can lead to a feeling of emptiness, as if you're living a life that isn't fully your own. This pattern often stems from a fear of rejection or a deep desire to be loved. You might think, if I just focus on their happiness, they'll stay, or if I make their world my world, we'll be closer. But true love doesn't require you to sacrifice your identity. In fact, losing yourself in someone else can create the very outcome you fear most: resentment, distance, and disconnection. When your individuality fades, the relationship loses the vibrant dynamic that made it special in the first place. One of the dangers of losing yourself in a relationship is that it becomes harder to recognize where you end and the other person begins. You might stop pursuing your passions, disconnect from your friends, or neglect your goals because they don't align with the relationship. You may even start to question your own opinions, silencing your voice to avoid conflict or maintain harmony. In the process, you lose the opportunity to bring your full, authentic self to the relationship as self that your partner likely fell in love with in the first place. Reclaiming yourself begins with remembering who you are outside of the relationship. What are your passions, your dreams, your values? What makes you feel alive and fulfilled? It's about reconnecting with the parts of yourself that might have been overshadowed and giving yourself permission to prioritize your own growth and happiness. This isn't selfish, it's essential. When you nurture your individuality, you bring more to the relationship, not less. Healthy love isn't about merging into one indistinguishable entity. It's about creating a space where both people can thrive as their authentic selves. It's about encouraging each other's growth and respecting each other's differences. Losing yourself might feel like devotion in the moment, but in the long run, it robs both you and your partner of the deep, meaningful connection that can only exist when two whole individuals come together. By holding onto your identity, you honor yourself and the relationship. You show that love doesn't require self-sacrifice, it requires self-awareness, mutual respect, and the courage to stay true to who you are. Sacrificing boundaries for approval is a subtle yet profoundly damaging behavior that many people fall into without realizing it. At its core, it stems from a deep desire to be liked, loved, or accepted, but the cost of this approval is steep. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what is acceptable and unacceptable in your relationships. They protect your time, energy, values, and emotional well-being. When you sacrifice these boundaries in the pursuit of approval, you not only give away pieces of yourself, but also teach others that it's okay to disregard your needs and limits. This behavior often starts with good intentions. You want to be accommodating, easygoing, or someone others can rely on. You say yes when you mean no. Overextend yourself to avoid disappointing others, and let small transgressions slide to keep the peace. In the moment, these sacrifices might seem minor, a little extra effort here, a bit of silence there, but over time, they add up. Slowly but surely, you start to feel drained, unappreciated, and even resentful. The approval you worked so hard to earn feels hollow because it came at the expense of your own well-being. Sacrificing your boundaries for approval sends a dangerous message to both yourself and those around you. To yourself, it communicates that your needs and feelings are less important than those of others, reinforcing a cycle of self-neglect. To others, it signals that they can push, demand, or take without consequence. This dynamic doesn't foster genuine connection. Instead, it creates imbalance and can lead to feelings of being used or undervalued. One of the biggest misconceptions about boundaries is that they push people away. In reality, healthy boundaries are a form of self-respect, and they teach others how to treat you. When you clearly communicate your limits and stick to them, you create relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. Those who truly care about you will honor your boundaries. Those who don't are revealing their true intentions. The fear of setting boundaries often comes from a worry about rejection or conflict. You might think, if I say no, they'll be upset with me. If I assert myself, they'll think I'm difficult, but the truth is, sacrificing your boundaries doesn't guarantee approval. It only guarantees that you'll feel increasingly disconnected from yourself. True approval, the kind that matters, comes from people who value you for who you are, not for how much you can give or how easy you are to manipulate. Reclaiming your boundaries starts with recognizing your worth. You deserve to have your needs respected and your feelings validated. Begin by identifying areas where your boundaries have been crossed and practice asserting them in small, manageable ways. For example, if you're always the one picking up extra responsibilities at work or in your personal life, try saying, "I'm unable to take that on right now." It might feel uncomfortable at first, but with time, you'll find that setting boundaries becomes an act of empowerment, not confrontation. And remember, boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. They don't isolate you from others. They create pathways for healthy, respectful relationships. By honoring your limits, you not only protect your well-being, but also invite others to do the same. Sacrificing boundaries for approval may feel like a shortcut to connection, but in the end, it leads to burnout and dissatisfaction. True approval begins with self-approval, and that starts with the courage to say, "This is what I need and I am worth it." Ignoring red flags for the sake of hope is a trap that many people fall into, especially when emotions run high and the desire for love or connection clouds judgment. When we encounter behavior or signs that are problematic in a relationship, our first instinct may not always be to acknowledge them. Instead, we often convince ourselves that things will get better, that the person will change, or that the issues are just temporary. This hope, while natural, can blind us to the reality of the situation and cause us to overlook warning signs that could be critical for our well-being in the long run. Red flags are the early indicators of behavior that doesn't align with your values, boundaries, or emotional safety. They can appear in many forms: dishonesty, emotional unavailability, disrespect, manipulation, or even just a general lack of care for your feelings. These signs may not always be obvious, but when you take a step back and look at them with clarity, you start to see a pattern that's not healthy. Ignoring these red flags doesn't change their existence. It simply allows them to grow more prominent as time goes on, creating deeper wounds that are harder to heal. Hope is a powerful emotion. It pushes us to believe in the best of people, to see potential where others might not, and to hold on when things get tough. But the problem arises when hope becomes an excuse to ignore reality. You may find yourself rationalizing someone's behavior with thoughts like they didn't mean it that way, or they've been through a lot, so it's understandable. While empathy is important in relationships, it should never come at the expense of your own needs and safety. Hope is a beautiful force, but it cannot override the truth. If someone's actions consistently hurt you, or don't align with the respect and care you deserve, no amount of hope will change the fact that the relationship is unhealthy. What often happens when we ignore red flags is that we enter a cycle of trying to fix things, trying to make the other person change, or trying to hold on to an idealized version of the relationship. This cycle often leads to disappointment, frustration, and self-doubt. The longer we ignore the warning signs, the more deeply ingrained the unhealthy behaviors become, and the harder it is to leave or to set boundaries. At some point, you may even start to internalize these red flags, thinking that they are somehow your fault or that you're being unreasonable for wanting better. But the truth is that your desire for respect, kindness, and honesty is not only valid, it's essential for your emotional health. Ignoring red flags also creates a false sense of attachment. You may become so invested in the hope of what could be that you lose sight of what actually is. You start living in a future that isn't guaranteed, rather than facing the present reality of how things are. This is where deep emotional exhaustion can set in. The energy spent on wishing, hoping, and trying to fix things could be better directed toward honoring your own well-being, rediscovering your strength, and letting go of a relationship that is holding you back. The key to moving forward is recognizing that you are worthy of love that uplifts you, encourages your growth, and makes you feel safe. Red flags are not obstacles to overcome. They are clear signals that something isn't right, and they should be respected. Hope should never compel you to ignore your own needs or to sacrifice your peace for the sake of potential. When you pay attention to the red flags, you protect your heart, your future, and your emotional integrity. Hope is important, but it should not come at the cost of your self-respect. The healthiest relationships are built on mutual respect, understanding, and truth, not the fantasy of what you hope someone might become. Neglecting your own growth is a dangerous path that many people unknowingly walk, especially when they become deeply invested in a relationship or the needs of others. Growth, in its truest sense, is not just about personal achievement, but about evolving into the best version of yourself emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. It involves challenging yourself, learning from experiences, and constantly striving to become more self-aware. When you neglect your growth for the sake of someone else or to fit into a certain mold, you not only halt your own progress, but you also risk losing the very essence of who you are. It's easy to fall into the trap of neglecting your own growth, especially when you place the needs of others ahead of your own. You might give up your hobbies, passions, and dreams to cater to someone else's desires or expectations. Perhaps you stop pursuing your goals because you feel they don't align with what someone else wants, or because you're constantly waiting for the right time to focus on yourself. While it's natural to want to support those you care about, it's important to remember that your growth should never be an afterthought. In fact, prioritizing your growth not only benefits you, but it also enriches the relationship with others. When you stop growing, you stop evolving, you stop learning, challenging your thinking, and expanding your worldview. This stagnation can lead to a sense of emptiness or dissatisfaction, even when everything else in your life seems fine on the surface. You may begin to feel disconnected from your own passions, unsure of who you are or what you truly want. The longer you neglect your growth, the more difficult it becomes to re-engage with your authentic self. You may start to rely too heavily on others for validation or to fill the void left by this self-neglect, but no relationship can thrive on this alone. Growth is necessary not just for your well-being, but also for maintaining healthy, balanced relationships. A common reason people neglect their growth is the fear of change. Change can be uncomfortable, especially if it means stepping outside of your comfort zone or facing uncertainty. But growth requires change. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about shedding old habits, beliefs, or limitations that no longer serve you and stepping into the fullness of your potential. The more you resist this change, the more you may find yourself stuck in cycles of complacency, feeling unfulfilled or disillusioned. But embracing growth requires courage, the courage to let go of the familiar, the comfort zone, and trust that becoming more of who you are is worth the effort. Another reason people neglect their growth is the illusion of balance. You might think that focusing solely on others or making sacrifices will make you a better partner, friend, or family member. But the truth is, neglecting your own growth only weakens your ability to contribute to others' growth. You can't be fully present for others if you're not nurturing your own self. The healthiest relationships, whether with a partner, family, or friends, are built on individuals who are continuously growing, supporting each other's aspirations, and allowing each other the freedom to evolve. To reclaim your growth, start by giving yourself permission to invest in yourself. Rediscover your passions, set new goals, and make time for activities that inspire you. Challenge yourself to learn something new, explore different perspectives, or dive into personal development. When you prioritize your own growth, you not only create a stronger sense of self, but you also attract relationships that nurture and encourage your evolution. Growth isn't selfish, it's essential. When you grow, you become the best version of yourself. And that is the greatest gift you can give to those you love and to yourself.